Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to look at reactivity, how it's understood within the fourth way system, and what one can do to get out of it. As with many things in life, the first step in getting out of the trap of reactivity is to recognize that one is engaging in it and just how much of it dominates one's life. We can be living a life consisting entirely of reactions, which means a life basically without freedom, while thinking that we are making free, conscious choices. What we're essentially talking about here is the difference between reacting and consciously responding. It is an important part of the teachings within the fourth way, which is a spiritual path of inner growth through self-observation and presence in everyday life, founded by the mystic spiritual teacher and philosopher Gurdjieff. When we live a reactive life, we allow external circumstances and whatever emotions are present at the moment to dictate our choices. And our reaction to an event often does not end in one reaction. It may turn into a series of reactions, setting the tone for the rest of the day, week, or month. Sometimes one single reaction may change the trajectory of one's entire life completely, even though there has been no real choice involved. The most obvious examples of this is people that commit horrible crimes in a state of reactivity, but there are less obvious examples, such as one bad financial decision that one never recuperates from, or that leads into a downward spiral of more bad decisions. To understand how to stop reacting, one must first recognize that almost all reactions come from what, in the fourth way system, is called the mechanical part of the self. In the fourth way system, you are taught that what you usually call yourself is not one single unified being, but a collection of many small parts, fragments, each with its own perspective, preferences, and history. These parts are often called I's, and they speak through you without your awareness. One moment, an I wants to be generous. Another moment, a different I wants revenge. This inner fragmentation means that reactions are not coming from a conscious, stable source. They are automatic responses triggered by circumstances. To begin changing this, the first step is self-observation. This is not the same as thinking about yourself, nor is it introspection in the usual sense. Self-observation is a deliberate practice of noticing what is happening in you without trying to change it or justify it. You notice thoughts, feelings, postures, tone of voice, movements, everything that makes up your usual way of being. In this, it's important not to judge what you find. Remember that what you find are parts of what the human condition at this point. Everyone carries these patterns to larger or lesser degrees, unless they truly have cleared out all emotional blockages and reactive patterns, which very few have at this point. Judgment only causes suffering, and for you to hide things from yourself. This shame that we feel around these things is part of our programming that we are now breaking free from. It keeps us in a state of comparison and feelings of inadequacy, while we, in reality, are so much more than we could ever imagine, and we just need to peel away all the layers of what was never part of us to begin with to see it. In this, what begins to emerge is the realization that our reactions are not just happening without conscious choice, they are also habitual. Someone says something sharp, and irritation arises. A memory returns, and sadness follows. A small praise appears, and vanity is stirred. And the more you observe, the more you see that the same types of situations give rise to the same types of reactions. You may most easily see these habitual patterns playing themselves out in small neutral events throughout your days initially. Every time you catch yourself doing the same thing as you've always done, even though you've decided otherwise, it is a sign that you are sleepwalking. And every time you catch yourself in this state and decide to change trajectory, you increase your present moment awareness and the neural pathways associated with the new habit. Furthermore, when you do this, you also strengthen your overall capacity to make conscious choices and change habits. It's important to truly understand that all reactions happen without your choice. it is also important to truly reflect on what this means. We are, for the most part, asleep to our own processes. In fact, fourth way language, we live in a state of psychological sleep, which means we go through life without remembering ourselves. We act, speak, and feel as if we are awake, but we are not. We are carried along by events, impressions, moods, and triggers. Reactions come from this state of sleep. So the second step is to begin awakening. Awakening, in this context, does not mean achieving some mystical experience. It means beginning to remember that you are here, now, experiencing this moment. It means having a small but steady part of attention placed on yourself as you go through ordinary life. You are walking, and at the same time, you know you are walking. You are talking, and at the same time, you are aware that you are talking. You are listening, and you are aware that you are listening. This divided attention, the capacity to hold both the outer and inner together, is essential. When you begin to cultivate this, reactions lose some of their power. Why? Because most reactions require identification to exist. Identification is the process by which one becomes absorbed in something, an event, a thought, a person, and forgets oneself entirely. In that state, you are the reaction. You are the anger, the fear, the jealousy. There is no space between the stimulus and your response. This is how an initial reaction turns into a pattern. But with divided attention, there is a space. You begin to see the reaction as something that is happening in you, rather than as you. This small shift is already a major transformation. Here you can begin to see how this is actually playing out, and thus start breaking free from this reactive mechanicalness. Just by observing something and becoming aware of it begins to shift it, as paying attention in itself is powerful. So, be mindful of where you place your attention. As we have seen, what happens when you become identified is that you go unconscious and become consumed by your inner life, rather than being the master of it. You are not in the driver's seat anymore. Habitual patterns of thinking, feeling, speaking, and acting are. De-identification does not mean detachment in a cold or distant way. You are present, but not swallowed. You hear criticism, but you do not become the one who is criticized. You experience pain, but you do not become the one who suffers endlessly. This takes effort, but not effort of strain. It is the effort of attention, of remembering, of staying present, of remaining aware enough to see what is going on and change the trajectory. As we saw in the beginning, the fourth way teaches that reactions are mechanical. They are part of the machine of your acquired personality, but you are not just this personality. In fact, you are part of an infinite consciousness, or God, even if this word comes with a lot of baggage. This is actually a limitation of the fourth way. Gurdjieff and his successors gave an excellent diagnosis of our condition, but they did not provide an answer that is applicable to most people, which was never their intent either. The answer is rather simple, and we touched upon it a moment ago when we spoke about self-observation in the beginning. It is simply awareness. Once you know your condition and how it plays itself out, what you first and foremost need to do is bring awareness back to the present moment every time you notice that you've been triggered into reactive, unconscious, mechanical behavior. Without awareness, no new choices can be made. And consequently, when you bring awareness back into the present moment, you are able to see the discomfort of new choices for the illusion that it is and break through it. We will get back to this in a little moment. And while we're here, stop for a moment to think about what these words mean, unconscious and mechanical. You need to see clearly that these words define reactivity and all the behavior that is associated with it. It's simply input and output, with no conscious choice put into it. It can be daunting to notice this in oneself, but remember that this is part of the human condition, And just by becoming aware of it, you are beginning to wake up from it. There are a lot of ways to bring more awareness into your life, such as the aforementioned self-observation, and any practice aimed at revealing what was previously hidden within your thoughts, emotions, words, and actions. Which brings us to the next point. Negative emotions are the primary way reactions express themselves. These include anger, resentment, anxiety, depression, self-pity, and many others. In the work, it is taught that these emotions are unnecessary. They serve no useful purpose in inner development. This may sound strange because many believe that emotional expression is healthy and necessary. But the fourth way offers a different view, one that is supported by both many spiritual and psychological teachings. Negative emotions do not cleanse you. They drain you. They keep you in sleep. They rob you of energy needed for inner growth. Here, it's important to point out that we are not talking about negative emotions related to real tragedies, which may need therapeutic work. Neither are we talking about suppression. When negative emotions arise throughout our days, we need to allow them to be observed, felt, and released without indulging in them. This is a very precise process. The emotions need to be acknowledged, allowed, and yet not focused on. If you allow your attention to be pulled into them, you will start struggling with them and hold on to them. You need to neither escape nor struggle with them. Just acknowledge their presence without reacting, and just let them be. This is an effortless process, but it is one that will take some practice, and even more importantly, observation. Because you need to become familiar with the habitual ways that you respond to the emotions, as it is very easy to think that we are doing this the right way, but in reality being caught up in struggle, clinging, suppression, or even being caught up in automatic negative thought loops. You may even occasionally find yourself acting out negative emotions verbally while not really being conscious that you are even experiencing negativity. When you see this in yourself, it is not a failure. It is actually a very important step toward freedom. So you begin to notice, when does a negative emotion start to rise? What triggered it? What justification appears in your mind? You begin to see the process before it fully takes over. This moment, this small space of observation, is your point of power. If you stay with it without feeding the emotion, something new happens. The reaction begins to weaken, and slowly, over time, its grip on you lessens. Another support in this process is intentional suffering. This does not mean seeking out pain. It means bearing the friction of going against one's mechanical tendencies. When you hold back a sarcastic remark, when you do not act on a petty irritation, when you choose to observe instead of reacting, you are practicing intentional suffering. It is a kind of inner sacrifice. You give up the small satisfaction of reaction to receive something larger. Because a part of why we continue reacting as we always have is because it gives us a payoff. It's uncomfortable to just sit with a feeling that is triggered by some type of stimulus instead of immediately responding out of habit. It's also uncomfortable to choose new responses, and it gives a sense of comfort and security to respond as we've always done, even if it leads to us staying in unwanted circumstances, feeding character traits that we would rather prune away. This is not effort in the usual sense, but our brains are geared towards survival, which means staying in the familiar. Since we have survived so far, our brains reason that we must have done something right. We have neural connections that we have practiced for a long time that, unless we consciously choose otherwise, and practice till we've established a new habit, make us behave in certain, predictable ways. But if you persist, with time, you begin to sense that something in you is growing that was not present before. This is not an idea. It is something you feel. You are less shaken. You are less carried away. You begin to feel inner space, a gap, a breath. You begin to live in that gap rather than in the storm. First, you only have glimpses of this state, and the change is often so subtle and so mingled with the old patterns that the fourth way also teaches the idea of valuation. To stop reacting, you must see the value of not reacting. You must come to understand, through personal experience, that reacting costs you something essential. It takes your energy. It fragments your attention. It keeps you in sleep. It even steals your authenticity from you, as the real you is drowned out by the mechanical self. When you see the cost, you begin to value the effort needed to stay awake, because you see that your reactivity is, in essence, robbing you of your life. There is also the idea of scale. In the beginning, small victories are important. You do not aim to become free of all reactions overnight. You aim to stay conscious in one conversation, during one difficult moment, through one day. These efforts accumulate. Each one builds your strength. Each one brings you closer to something real in yourself. This is because every choice, no matter how small, has an effect on you. Every choice changes your neurology, and on a larger scale, every choice shifts the timeline that you're on. As above, so below. In summary, reactivity is what happens when we forget ourselves. In the fourth way system, it's understood that most of what we call choice is actually mechanical repetition, patterns running without awareness. The way out begins with self-observation, noticing what's happening in you without judgment. This creates space between stimulus and response, and in that space, real awareness can return. You don't have to fight your reactions, just stop feeding them. Stay present. Feel what arises, and choose not to act from habit. This isn't about suppression or effort in the usual sense. It's about remembering yourself. Remembering that you are here now, looking out through your ire in this present moment. Each moment of awareness interrupts the old pattern. Each pause brings you closer to what's real in you. This is the path from sleep to presence, from noise to clarity. And it begins now, simply by noticing. This path is not about suppressing emotion, nor about becoming emotionally numb. It is about purification, not through denial, but through clarity. When you are no longer identified with reactions, your emotions begin to serve you instead of controlling you. Joy becomes deeper. Sadness becomes cleaner. Fear, when observed, begins to lose its grip. You can allow the emotions to be what they are and pass through, instead of holding on to them and feeding them by ruminating over them and reacting to them. Remember that there are essentially two components here. The first, it. So learn to observe yourself honestly so that you notice all the times that you get triggered into mechanical responses. Triggers can either come from external events or because of some mental activity that arises independently of external circumstances, such as a random memory that pops up, or some thought loop that starts playing in relation to something in your life that you are unsatisfied with. Next, you need to just stay with whatever has been triggered, go against your habitual programming, and make conscious choices in relation to what is going on within. Remember that your mind is like a machine. It's not you, and left on its own, it doesn't make conscious choices. But the more you can rest in the awareness behind all the movements of the mind, the more you will be able to place the real you, which is one with the awareness, in the driver's seat. If you want to go deeper into self-observation, we have a video about it on the end screen right now, together with 2 other videos that will help you explore the themes of this one more deeply. You've now reached the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for your time.